Well, good afternoon. Happy Monday, everyone. So, technically, yesterday was the end of Hispanic Heritage Month. But you know what? Over here in Career Talk with OG, we have many people. In fact, we could literally spend a second of every day of the year highlighting incredible people. And today, I have the pleasure to have mi estimado John Hernandez, Dr. John Hernandez. He is the president of Irvine Valley College. And we're going to be talking about his personal journey as a first generation immigrant to being college president. John, buenas tardes. Welcome to Career Talk with OG.
Buenas tardes, Oscar. Thank you for having me. I know we've been in touch on LinkedIn mostly, and it's just been following you as well, and just very honored to be in this space with you.
No, thank you. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation because there's some things that you and I share here, and let me just kind of give people just a little bit of background, un poquito de sabor, a little bit of taste about your background here. So, again, Dr. John Hernandez, he is a first generation immigrant and a product of the California Community College system. He knows firsthand the impact that college education has. His educational journey was shaped in part by EOP&S, which, by the way, John, I'm also a former EOP&S student, so we have that in common. Uh, John also, he's published a number of journal articles, including En sus voces and their voices, understanding the retention of Latina college students, and also has sits and has been on multiple boards as well. And he's got a long history of making a difference in education, over 30 plus year history. And today he is the college president at Irvine Valley College. John, one of the things that I tell this to people a lot, my natural personality is an introvert, so I observe a lot. And in this case, I started following you on LinkedIn and I started to see your activity outside of the class or outside of your office, engaging with students, parents, the community, faculty, staff. And I think that's what drew me to you, because you can spend your entire day in the office taking care of what you need to, but tú, amigo, estás con la gente, estás con nosotros. So
Yes, yes.
why don't we start, John? Tell us a little bit more, audience, a little bit about either personal, your career journey, something that's not on your bio or on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Oscar. Wow. Just before I do that, I just wanted to comment on your introduction that when I started in this field, in this profession, my heart was to be in the front lines to assist students. I never, and that's the truth, I did not at that point in my career aspire to be an administrator by
Mm.
any means. And as life happens, opportunities and doors open up, and I transition into these roles. I've learned that intentionally creating time and creating space to have interactions with students in particular, but with our campus constituents and, por supuesto, con la comunidad, with our community. It doesn't just happen. You have to carve and create the time. And that visibility is so important.
Yes.
I mean, and I love it because I could walk the campus. Just Friday, I was coming back from a leadership management team meeting at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday. The campus is pretty quiet by then. And two students came up to me and said, "You're the college president, right?" And I said, "I am." And they said, "Oh, we heard you at our laser day, which was our first year orientation." And so it gave me a chance to just chat with them a little bit and ask them about their experience and how they were navigating their first year in college. And that is important. That level of visibility, I firmly believe, keeps me grounded, keeps me real, And when I am in back-to-back meetings and at times feeling extremely frustrated, all I have to do is do a 20, 25, 30-minute walk on the campus
Yes.
of that, to reconnect with people, to feel recharged, and to remind me why I entered this profession, which is to make
Yes.
a difference. And so I will start with, and you've mentioned this, but my family immigrated to this country when I was 7 years old. It was in a historical time. It was the late 60s here in California. There was no bilingual education at the time. It was full immersion. There was what I would call, in some ways, forced assimilation.
Yes.
My birth name is Juan, and my family's always called me by my middle name, Juan Carlos.
Mm,
And when we signed up in elementary school, I automatically wasn't even asked. It was just part of what was expected. I became John, and my sister Raquel became Rachel, and that just followed us for so many years.
yeah.
But like the children of so many immigrants, our parents often come to this country, and in many cases at great cost to what
Yeah.
they left behind or to themselves, because they understand the opportunities that are available here and opportunities for the children. And so for me growing up, there was always a sense of take advantage of the educational opportunities that we have, right?
Yes.
So that it didn't matter how tough it got, what the obstacles were. There was always this sense, and I see that in our students. There's a sense of how could I disappoint my familia and not complete what I started. And
Yeah.
so for me, that journey into education, and I'm so thankful that I started at a community college. I'm so thankful for a program like EOP&S that just grounded me, gave me a sense of purpose, helped me believe in myself,
Yeah.
built up confidence. And so to be able to serve and give back in that capacity, I think is one of the greatest achievements that I could think of, for myself personally. So, as I said, I started off honestly wanting to be a community college counselor because I wanted to give back, just like my community college counselor had shaped and influenced my life. And it wasn't until fast forward, I had an opportunity working at Cal State Fullerton to serve in an assistant dean for student affairs role, that I realized that when I had a place, and I use this metaphor a lot, a place and a voice at the table, I
Mm,
began to realize the impact that I could make at the 30,000 level as opposed to in the front lines. And so that was eye opener, and that was a major shift for me in my career. It's ironic. I worked full time while I went to do and complete my master's part time. Took me almost 6.5 years to finish, and it was ironic that by the time I finished, I no longer wanted to do what I had started to do. Which, that's just the way life is. But
yes.
I'm very thankful for the counseling experience and the professional preparation that I think to this day has benefited me in terms of my facilitation skills, listening skills,
Hmm.
people skills, connecting, and just knowing that this this business of ours is relational. It's about relationships
Yes.
with people at the simplest core. So I think all of those pieces have impacted and influenced and shaped me. But I'm very thankful to my parents, to my family, and I realize that when you come from an immigrant experience, you are any experience in terms of our lived experiences and our multiple intersecting identities, we have that firsthand ability to understand so much of what our students are still experiencing, so many of the obstacles, and
Yes.
a renewed sense of hope that we can transform our institutions for the better.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I've been taking notes here because you're touching on so many important areas that I want to touch upon here, John. And the first one, I want to go back. You mentioned about changing your name, from Juan, or this, not you, but essentially this, the system, the educational system, and your sister's name, um, and also, the time in which you went to school compared to the times today.
Yeah.
Let's talk about assimilation here. I myself, like you, my parents were born in Mexico. I was born in California. We moved back to Mexico about a month after I was born, and then we came back when I was 5. So essentially, I started my education, schooling here in the U.S. And there was a lot of that desire wanting to fit in and that assimilation and
Yeah.
so forth. From your perspective, in terms of assimilation, what are what, were there some times where that assimilation, maybe, yeah, there was a struggle at home versus, in school, in terms of, are you Juan, are you John, who am I, like, where do I fit
Yeah.
into all this?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Um, One of my earliest recollections was walking to school, in elementary school in Anaheim, where I grew up, and hearing Spanish-speaking children speaking Spanish with their families. And then here I was, in the first grade, full immersion, no bilingual ed, and oftentimes asking my classmates to help with translation, and being told, I don't speak Spanish. When I knew what I heard on the walks to school, right? So it was an era where, you weren't encouraged to speak your language. You weren't encouraged to have that sense of pride and being bicultural, bilingual, multilingual, for that matter. I will say that, yeah, in some ways it was forced assimilation, but it was also a choice, except that by the time I became a naturalized citizen at the age of 25, all my educational records were John Carlos, so I just stayed with it.
Yes,
But there have been times in my life where I feel like perhaps, I abandoned an important aspect of who I am and my familial name.
yes,
But we often hear our students speak about this paradigm, ni de aquí ni de allá, neither here
yes,
nor there, because of these competing expectations.
yes,
I'm Cubano. I was raised primarily with Chicano, Mexican American, and very much identified with that experience, particularly very California centric. Um, the Spanish at home, the English, and
yes,
frankly, just navigating multiple environments. And I know we use terms like code switching and just
yes,
but frankly, when we think of whether you're immigrant, first generation, I love that there's a very concerted effort moving away from the deficits of students and instead looking at our assets, and
yes,
the incredible institutional opportunities we have to redefine the paradigm. But
yes,
more importantly, this skill set, which I didn't even realize was a skill set I was developing, right? To be able to enter into a particular space and learn to adapt,
yes,
and then you enter a different space and you switch and you adapt accordingly, and I
yes,
still do that in and out of
yes,
my daily experience. And so to me, again, those are all experiences that and I like to see it as being acculturated, in the sense that we get to define the aspects that we want to be an important element of how we present ourselves to others.
yes,
And that's not something that I was afforded as a child,
yes,
but throughout my collegiate experience, graduate school, and now as an adult, those are things that I'm able to reclaim
yes.
and to have a great sense of pride in.
Yes. Well, and I know exactly where, because that's exactly too how I feel in being able to um go and be with, in this environment or this group, etc. I mean, listen, just last week I did a keynote talk for a Fortune 100 company, and the very next day I was down at another college in Southern California doing a workshop for undocumented students.
Yep.
Right. So, okay, John. So here's a follow-up question to this here. What advice, if you were mentoring a professional today, a minority professional who is starting to get into leadership roles, or potentially maybe being tapped to be on a board where he or she is doing exactly what you now know how to do and are very comfortable to go, into different groups, what advice would you give that professional to help them feel more comfortable, confident, or whatever it is they need to do to be able to navigate these
Yeah.
different spaces?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, entering whatever spaces those are and being authentic, because to me, that's at the core of who we are. And
Yeah.
when you come into those spaces with, the fullness of who you are, um, like that's such an important piece to not neglect and not feel that you're not able, right, to fully
Yeah.
represent the fullness of who you are. So I think authenticity. I know we talk a lot about that, and there's people have published about authentic leadership and what have you.
Yeah.
But to me, that's an important piece. The other is that you do have to a certain extent have um, the ability and the comfort level to gauge your environment, to gauge your audience, to gauge the peers and the roles that we are asked to perform. So
Mhm.
if it's being on a board of directors, or if it's leading and facilitating a session, I mean, you know, you have to be able to have a diverse enough tool set, if you will, a
Yeah.
toolkit to be able to adapt to that environment. I will say that, and I know that's a term that we use, and at times I struggle using it because I feel like, well, am I just perpetuating this concept? But I mean, to this day, there are times that I walk into spaces and I feel as if I may not have as much to contribute as others.
Mm. Yes,
I know
yes, yes,
I know people have talked a lot and written about imposter syndrome, but
yes.
frankly, that is something that I have to personally own.
Yeah.
And I was recently invited to a space where there were industry experts and other higher ed leaders on a particular topic that, frankly, I didn't feel like I had enough knowledge to be fully contributing, but I
Mhm.
used it as an opportunity to learn and to absorb. And I told myself, even as
Yeah.
I was driving to this session, I've started having that self doubt. I told myself, you know
Yes.
what? If nothing else, be a fly on the wall, listen, hear, and learn, because you're
Yeah.
going to walk away with some knowledge that you
Yeah.
didn't have before you got there. And so I guess part of that is accepting the vulnerability that we often
Yeah.
feel when
Yeah.
we enter spaces that we feel, either rightly or not, underprepared, or like, do I really, have what it takes to be here? And at the end of the day, I believe that when we have that self-reflection, we empower ourselves to realize that often we undermine everything about who we are.
Yeah.
And I realize that's a journey too. uh,
Yes.
so I don't know. I guess if I was summarizing, being authentic, having a diverse skill set to know, adaptability to your audience, to the content, be okay with your vulnerability, but reclaim it, and use it as an asset as opposed to a deficit.
Yeah. Well, everyone, obviously this is being recorded. Go back and rewind this section here from John, because John just saved you $1,000 in executive coaching fees. Okay. Those are some great tips there, John. And, with regards to you kind of touched a little bit on that imposter syndrome and how, like you said, that, sometimes you feel like, can I really contribute? Am I really, this is my own personal views on part of imposter syndrome. I think, like fear, I believe fear is something that we don't completely eliminate. In fact, actually, fear is there. It's a feeling to protect us
Right.
from
Right.
danger. And I believe imposter syndrome, to some extent, is not something that we completely eliminate, but rather what we can do over time. And as do like what you just said, that you get yourself out of your comfort zone, or you learn to minimize the amount of time that we feel like we don't belong, etc.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe if it took us a year to get over this feeling, now it could be 5 minutes. And I'm
Right.
like,
Yeah.
ya estamos listos. Let's go. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And I guess I've also come to accept that, throughout my whole life, like I just keep recycling some things. But
Yes.
I love how you framed it. Earlier at a different point in my life, that recycling might have taken me a lot more time to have processed and kind of, gotten through the comfort level, as opposed to recognizing it when you're feeling and
Right.
experiencing it, and then reclaiming it, and then looking for an opportunity in that situation that then can benefit you both personally
Yes.
and professionally.
Yes. Yes. 100%. Absolutely. Um, let's move on to another thing that you mentioned about you taking advantage of opportunities. So I hear a lot, you just like I'm sure you do, you hear the phrase being thrown, knowledge is power, knowledge is power. And I say that is not true. Applied knowledge is power. Because listen, diabetes runs in my family, and guess what I had today for breakfast? Pan dulce. All right, so right, like I know, okay. But this takes me to you taking advantage of opportunities. And I see so many people that, for whatever reason, I'm not judging them, okay, because I don't know their circumstance, but
Right.
they don't take advantage of opportunities. Tell us a little bit more about you taking advantage of those opportunities, and what is it about John that when you see an opportunity, you apply and take advantage of it,
Yeah.
versus some people that are exposed to opportunities and they don't take advantage of them.
And you're making me reflect on the reality of many of our students, that it seems so cliche to say take advantage of an opportunity,
Yeah.
when you're in a position or in a place that isn't having to struggle about, where your next meal is going to come from,
Yes.
or, I don't, I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight. I mean,
Yeah.
the kinds of things that many of our students are struggling with. And it's so easy to say, take advantage of an opportunity, when, as you said, we're not judging, but you also have to be so fully, and I am fully aware that whatever my experience was in college may not have been the same experience for
Yeah.
others, right?
Yeah.
I mean, certainly I was in a working class, household. My dad, did his best to provide for us. I'm thankful. That strong work ethic is a value that I think has been transmitted to my
Yeah.
experience from what I observed at home. I was fortunate, that I was able to live at home while I commuted to my community college, and then to my Cal State for my undergraduate experience. I always worked part-time on campus. I had financial aid to help support and pay for educational and living expenses. So, I want to put a context to that,
Yes.
because I realize that that's not everyone's
Correct.
experience, right?
Correct.
But I also, I'll never forget, during high school, my junior year, I was working at a convalescent hospital in the evenings.
Mm,
And then in the summers, I would work full time. And I remember thinking, oh, well, maybe I should work, save some money, buy a car. And my parents, they were so responsive. They didn't say hell no. Um, but what they said was, well, if you want to do that, just know that you're going to have to contribute to the rent, to all the other expenses, to your, and that gave me like a whole different pause. Like, oh, well, then maybe, this isn't really the route I want to go. So, there were little things like that along the way,
yeah.
but I also feel so blessed that throughout my entire career, doors of opportunities opened up. When I had and I just ran into two of my former Fullerton College professors a couple of weeks ago at the investiture of Cynthia Olivo as the president at Fullerton College, and it was beautiful to run into both of these professors. But one of them in particular, Adela Lopez, I'll never forget, when she nominated me and was helping me write my scholarship essays and letters of recommendation. And it's little things like that, and I have so many examples in grad school, in my doctoral program, in my professional career, people who have like gone out of the way to mentor me and to inspire me and to push me out of my comfort zone. I feel that often opportunities isn't just about, oh, did you hear about this? You should
Yeah.
apply for it. But it's the people that have come into my life that have afforded me the belief and the strength to say, hey, this is something you can do. Like, maybe you haven't given it a lot of thought, but I really want to encourage you to consider it, right? And so I think opportunity sometimes is something that's there that you have to take the initiative to pursue. Opportunities can sometimes be when you don't know about opportunities if you've never been exposed to it. So having people who
Yes.
have come into my life to open doors for things I've never would have maybe even imagined, one that existed or two that I could do. And so I feel so blessed is the word I'm using, but
Mhm.
I do feel blessed that I've had at different points in my life people that came into my life that helped shape and open those opportunities for me just
Yeah.
by reinforcing the belief in myself and also informing me of things that maybe I would not have known about.
Yeah. Oh gosh, and you're reminding me of my sixth grade. I was doing well in my math, and my sixth grade teacher gave me a note. It was really from the school through the teacher. And basically, it was a letter where my parents needed to sign to approve that in middle school, I'd go into a higher track math. Well, I didn't know this now until I was an adult, but by going to the higher track math, it basically keeps you on track to, A through, what is it, A through F or A
Right.
through G, requirements here in California. My parents didn't speak English or anything. I was their translator, and
Yeah.
and so it was on me to do that. I forgot about to get my parents' signature, and the day before that letter was due, my sixth grade teacher reminded me, and Mr. Jones said, "Oscar, don't forget to get your parents' signature on that letter." Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Jones, and so I did. But it was just something as simple and a small gesture like that, as you're describing, people coming into our life, believing in us or nudging us or pushing us to these opportunities, right? That makes a big difference to do it.
And, and,
Um,
and it's good. I tell folks, or I share, I should say, even at every opportunity I can. And I'm at a campus that, like, I feel like the culture and the belief here with our employees, we have gone through some formal process to participate as a caring campus, but beyond that, I love it when people recognize and realize, like, don't ever underestimate a small gesture, stopping a student looks lost, asking them
Yes.
if they need help. I mean, the little things that remind people and that also affirms a sense of belonging. All those things might seem, I mean, from the most minimal to, from the micro to the macro, like when you're in an environment that is aware consciously and is working towards shifting that paradigm and putting the onus on us as educators,
Yeah.
not on the student, to transform our institutions, to make them more welcoming, and to ensure that every student's experience is designed for success.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that just doesn't happen magically, right? Like, it
No.
requires every single person within the organization, in whatever their spheres of influence are, to begin to make those changes, and to fully engage and embrace that belief. And anyway, I just, it's just a reminder that the way we impact each other and our students sometimes is may not seem like something that makes the news, but it can make such an important difference for an individual.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think part of this comes from John, your own personal journey and experiences,
Agreed.
coming from very little and having people, like you said, in your life contributing, some a little bit, some a lot more, and that you now, as a professional, as you know, as an adult, reflect back on that and really understand and value how just such a small gesture can really make a difference. Which, to me, again, as an outsider, connecting and seeing what you post on it even makes now more sense why you do what you do,
Yeah.
being out with the students and the community and so forth. To definitely. Um, last point that I want to touch upon here in our conversation. And by the way, we can be on here for like an hour and a half here because there's a lot. All right, but we both got stuff to do. But the last point I want to touch upon, have you touch upon, John, is another thing that you mentioned, and that is having a place and a voice at the table, having a place and a voice at the table of leadership, of influencers, policymakers. um what so two-part question. First part, when tell us what it was like when you first set foot, and you were around con los meros, as we say in Spanish. And then secondly, what advice do you have for anyone wanting to have that space at the table and make a positive influence? So how did you start? How did it feel the first time? And today, what advice do you have for
Yeah.
someone,
So the I'll say the first time, and when I reference the first time, I'm talking about my first position that allowed me to navigate in a different space than I had previously. And it took me a bit, but observing, listening, and realizing, as I mentioned earlier, the impact that you could have around policy development, institutional priorities, resource allocation. And, often we make decisions in life not so much based on what we know as much as on what we don't know.
Mm.
And so it was interesting that all those years I was thinking, no, I don't want to go into administration. Like, who wants to deal with the bureaucracy and the BS and the politics, right? I want to be like, I want to be on the front line helping the students.
Yes,
And yeah, there's bureaucracy, there's politics, there's BS and everything that we
yes,
engage in, and that's just life.
yes,
But when I was in that space and I began to realize the impact, it was a bit overwhelming, but at the same time, it was so empowering. And it just helped me think differently about where I thought I could make the greatest impact.
yeah,
And that ultimately was my transformational career shift to want to pursue administration.
yes,
But what advice would I give? And I want to just say it from a more global perspective, not administrative centric, because we all have spheres of influence. And I love that term.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you do on a college campus, and even if it's not on a college campus, we all have a spheres of influence, whether it's in a staff role, a counselor, an instructor has a great sphere of influence in the classroom, as we all know, an administrator. It is in many ways taking ownership of whatever your sphere of influence is and realizing that through your voice, through your engagement, that you can push back on things that don't make sense. You can be part of the solution about how we redesign our colleges.
Yes.
We've engaged in a book read, and we had as a guest speaker last spring, Dr. Tia McNair, on becoming a student-ready college.
Mm,
Um, and again, it requires not just a few, but the larger mass of us to feel a sense of ownership and knowing that we may not be able to make a transformational change at the full institutional level, but if we all are working towards making changes in our little spheres of influence, whatever those are, can you
yes.
imagine the impact when we're all committed towards doing that?
Right, right, right. And I tell the people you cannot, because right now, what baseball playoff season, right, is on. And by the way, I don't know what if you're a Dodger fan, but I'm a Giants fan. So, anyways, that's a different conversation here. But, but my
Hey,
point,
your LA fans won't hold it against you.
yeah. But as I tell people, you cannot win a championship game with only
Yeah,
pitchers.
right.
Everyone has to play their role to the best of their ability. And so, as you're saying, John, everyone just, puts su granito de arena, right? The
That's
little pebble of sand there. But definitely, John, I want to give you an opportunity here to have the final word. And I know, I
Thank you.
believe you have a poem,
I
or
do.
something that you want to. So take it away.
Sure.
It's yours.
Gracias. So as I was reflecting on my own first gen experience and what that feels like when, you often don't feel like you have the social capital, and so many of our students don't understand, the lingo that we use, the
Yeah.
processes that we have in place, and again, it's our role to transform that in a way that is relevant and responsive to our students, but we have a Puente program here at IBC. We're in our third cohort, and during the first week of classes, I get invited to come speak to the Puentistas, and I love being able to share a little bit about my own educational journey. And I always leave them with two little things. One is an affirmation pop-up card, and the other is a poem that is not a new poem. It was published in well, at least it was published by Pat Mora in 1986 in the publication Borders, and it's called University Avenue. And
Yeah.
I had asked you if it was okay to end
Yes.
with this again, in the spirit of being the first, right?
Yes.
We are the first of our people to walk this path. We move cautiously, unfamiliar with the sounds, guides for those who follow. Our people prepared us with gifts from the land, fire, herbs, and song. Yerba buena soothes us into morning. Rhythms hum in our blood. Abrazos linger around our bodies. Cuentos whisper lessons in Espanol. We do not travel alone. Our people burn deep within us.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. That is, I can see why you love this poem, why you end it, because that is the essence of nuestra cultura.
Sí,
Who we
así
are, that's
es.
what we experience, right? And that's what you, my friend, I tell people, like, yes, I mean, there's no replacement meeting someone face to face, pressing the flesh. But today we can also learn so much about other people just through online being connected as you and I.
Agreed.
and I've learned so much from you, John, and I want to thank you for being a guest here on Career Talk with OG, because you've added value to my life and to those that are watching and those that are going to be listening to this episode. I know you're going to be touching their lives too, as well. And thank you for having the courage to pursue these opportunities that have become available to you, because you are setting the example for the rest of us. So muchísimas
Gracias.
gracias.
Thank you. It's been my honor to be with you, Oscar.
Yeah, no. So thank you everyone for joining us again. I see we have some folks here, Lazaro, Vivian as well. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, have a wonderful week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Adios.
Adios.